Welcome back. We turn now to that wild presidential debate on CNBC. As you know, if you watched any of it, it was a raucous 2 hours with moderators struggling to maintain control. Marco Rubio's performance generated the most praise. Jeb Bush is fighting off criticism that he was lackluster and failed to reinvigorate his campaign. Steve Shepard of Politico joins us in a moment, but first the highlights and perhaps lowlights from Boulder. Here's correspondent Tom Yamas.
For the first time, Donald Trump was not in the middle of the biggest fight at a Republican debate.
What is it, like a French work week? You get like 3 days where you have to show up?
Jeb Bush going after the man he mentored, Senator Marco Rubio, attacking him for missing votes in the Senate.
You can campaign or just resign and let someone else take the job.
But Rubio standing his ground, delivering a line that left Bush silent and the audience cheering.
Someone has convinced you that attacking me is going to help you. I'm not running against Governor Bush. I'm not running against anyone on the stage. I'm running for president because there is no way we can elect Hillary Clinton to continue the policies of Barack Obama.
I think there's a big
But Trump did have his moments, like when Governor John Kasich described his campaign as fantasy land.
We cannot elect somebody that doesn't know how to do the job.
Trump unleashing.
Number two, this is the man that was a managing general partner at Lehman Brothers when it went down the tubes and almost took every one of us with us.
Post-debate, Trump giving me his take.
Was that tough not to be the star?
I don't know what you mean by the star.
Like the focus, like all the questions weren't at you?
Well, I think it was very unfair. I mean, it's become very unfair. I think that I did very well. According to all of the online polls, I got 80% as a win.
Candidates also critical of the questions. Christie exploding when Bush was asked about fantasy football.
We have ISIS and Al-Qaeda attacking us, and we're talking about fantasy football? Can we stop?
And Christie tangling with CNBC's John Harwood.
Because I got to tell you the truth, even in New Jersey, what you're doing is called rude. So,
And Senator Ted Cruz winning cheers with this debate critique.
This is not a cage match. And you look at the questions. Donald Trump, are you a comic book villain? Ben Carson, can you do math? How about talking about the substantive issues people care about?
And even with all eyes on Dr. Ben Carson, the frontrunner in some of the latest polls, he ended up being one of the candidates who had the least amount of time to speak.
What was your greatest moment of the night?
When the debate was over.
The RNC also blasting the moderators, saying they did a disservice to both the candidates and the voters. The next debate is in less than 2 weeks, but this one was still important because candidates are running out of time to raise substantial money before the holidays hit. Tom Yamas, ABC News, Boulder, Colorado.
Thank you, Tom. Steve Shepard, a lot to chew on here, a fascinating 2 hours. This debate, I think, quite different in many ways from the other debates that we've seen up until now. Let's begin with the Mark Rubio-Jeb Bush moment. Jeb Bush seemed to walk right into a brick wall with his face exposed, and he paid for it, at least if you listen to the vast majority of the commentary coming out of Boulder.
Yeah, now Jeb Bush's campaign in recent days kind of telegraphed this attack. The supporting super PAC went up just with these Twitter ads, blasting Marco Rubio for Senate attendance. Just in the hours before this debate, this was an attack the Rubio people knew was coming, and their candidate was ready for it. And, you know, Bush was supposed to be the front runner in this field. Here he is picking a fight with someone who, you know, has far less experience than he does from the same state, trying to compete for the same constituency, and was kind of rope-a-dope by Rubio, and he counterpunched well.
Was it remarkable to you, did you consider it noteworthy watching the encounter that the two men who have dominated this race till now seemed to recede? They weren't heard from a lot, and when they were, it wasn't particularly memorable?
Well, CNBC seemed to make a judgment that they weren't going to ask Donald Trump the majority of the questions, as some of the other moderators have done, to give him more speaking time. He had to butt in a lot in order to be heard from. Ben Carson, this is not his format. You know, I shouldn't say that. We have watched these three debates now and thought that Ben Carson, soft-spoken, kind of rambling, he's not concise, he's not canned, he doesn't have those zingers that we were used to from politicians, and that seems to appeal to people because Republican primary voters at this point, as you're seeing, a majority of them, they don't want another politician right now, and so that's refreshing, I think, for them.
Good performance from Ted Cruz. Good performance by Ted Cruz. Does he potentially get a boost?
I think he will. Look, Ted Cruz is trying to compete for the same voters that Donald Trump and Ben Carson have right now. He's trying to be the viable alternative for them when the political outsiders stumble. He's positioned himself well. Look, his first, really, other than his opening statement, his first line of the night was attacking the moderators and the mainstream media. It got some of the loudest cheers of the night. Republican primary voters love to beat up on the mainstream media, and he took advantage of that.
Was this Chris Christie's best night?
It's tough to say. Chris Christie, he did answered the question about fantasy football in an interesting way. Chris Christie supports legalizing sports gambling in New Jersey. It's been controversial. He's gone to federal court about this, fighting federal judges on this issue. So it's actually a big issue for him. For him to downplay it in a debate about the economy, it kind of rings hollow if you've been following it. But for a lot of people, that those flashes of anger, that's always been the core of his appeal. And we'll have to see. Look, he was at 1% in the most recent poll. Even if it does help him, I'm not sure that it helps him enough to get him in the top tier with some of these other candidates.
There's been so much criticism of the moderators. Part of me hates to pile on, but I thought it was a remarkable contrast. When you look at last night's event and all the crosstalk and the chaos and handling a debate is tough.
Yes.
It is not easy. If you think it's easy, it's because you've never done it. But this was not a good debate, and the other ones really look even better now in hindsight, when you observe one go off the rails in quite such a painful fashion.
If you think it's tough, try doing it with 10 candidates. Try doing it when one of the 10 candidates is Donald Trump. It is basically a thankless job. It's impossible to do well. That said, I think because this was the third one, it was a time when CNBC did a lot of the same things that Fox and CNN did in the first two. Mm-hmm. But I think the candidates are tired of it. I think a lot of the voters are tired of it. They're trying to foment this conflict and create these, CNN particularly would pick two people out and we want you to fight each other right now. And that was the question they asked. Well, now it's the third time we're doing this. And I think a lot of the candidates and the campaigns and the Republican National Committee seemingly are sick and tired of it.
The undercard debate is now bringing together people on fumes, fractions of a percent and what have you. Does that aspect of this go away? I mean, and do some of these people really face just kind of a difficult inward moment of introspection about do they even continue on, Lindsey Graham and all these other people?
It doesn't go away suddenly. There's still going to be an undercard debate in the next debate, which is hosted by the Fox Business Network on November 10th. But it goes away as far as people paying attention. Look, this CNBC debate last night got half the audience, or maybe even less than half the audience when the final numbers are tallied, than the first two. It went up against the World Series, which is a whole other issue, and it was on a minor cable channel. No offense to our friends at CNBC. But it's not Fox News or CNN. People aren't finding this, so people didn't tune in for the undercard debate this time. And next time, Fox Business Network is even more obscure in a lot of ways. These are going to fade away slowly, more so than just be cut off and ended in one fell swoop.
A real interesting moment in this ongoing battle. Thanks for helping us provide some analysis today. Steve Shepard,
of course.
Campaigns and Elections Editor for our friends at Politico. Good to see you as always. We'll step aside, back with much more right after this.